welcome back to my channel. As you can probably tell, after I moved, I haven't found a new good place to film, so we are exploring our options. Today, we are doing a quick video about a Japanese mystery author that I feel like I have to do this now before 2025 ends because he unfortunately passed away recently, and this is a video for him. I wanted to do that because I liked him for like a long time, so this is what I wanted to do for him. And I hope if you haven't heard about this author at all, I hope you can be interested in reading these books. Yasuhiko Nishizawa, who was a Japanese author famous for his murder mysteries with sci-fi elements. He was born in 1960 in Japan. He studied creative writing in the US and then returned to Japan, being a full-time author while sometimes teaching in university. Today we will be talking about two of his books that I have read and I loved tremendously. The first one was his only book that was translated into English, and it was published by Random House, so it should be relatively easy to find. The Man Who Died 7 Times. It starts with a typical, actually I want to say cliche opening. A family whose members hated each other was gathering in a mansion to discuss the inheritance from their wealthy grandpa. This is how almost half of the murder mysteries that I have read started. So what makes this one stand out? Hisataro, that's me, that's how he said me in the book, has a, you can say, disease or a specialty that some of his days, my days, will repeat for 9 times. And the 9th time will be the final version of his day. These days happen randomly, and he fully accepted his specialty and dealing with it in a nihilism approach. Sometimes it was really good for him because he can take the test again and again and reach a very high mark. Sometimes it's miserable for him because there are days that none of us wanted to repeat again. But on this day, that in the story, that grandpa was supposed to reveal who will inherit his fortune, grandpa died. And the next day, Hisataro realized the day repeats again, that this is the day that's going to be repeated for another 8 times. So to save grandpa, or at least find out who killed him, he needs to change the past in these 9 days. The book tells a story in a way by repeating every day and showing us what he did differently that day. Some might say that the author writes a story that has no character. I get that, because in each day we know more about these characters and what they was doing when grandpa died and what changed comparing to the previous day. But all of these characters in the book were very one-dimensional. I get that his critics will think that this is not a well-written literature, but he did give the best plots in the history. It was a tightly knitted plot web that every day the reader learned something new about his family, and the story got moved forward dramatically. I think on one of the day, the murder escalated on a level that caught me by surprise. And personally, I don't hold the character building, or lack of, you should say, against him, because this is the first sci-fi murder mystery that I have ever read. It gave me this new thrilling review that you can combine a murder mystery with layers and flavors that contain in a science fiction. I have never read anything that combines these two together. And he didn't use it as an excuse to solve the murder. He solved the case in a meticulous, thought-out, orthodox way. It was very refreshing in a pile of traditional murder mystery. The next book, it has come to me after Googling that it has not been translated into English yet. It's a pity because Personally, this is my favorite book of Nishizawa. The Chinese title of this book is translated into Many Reasons for Dismemberment. This is a short story collection involving murder mysteries with surprise dismemberment. The story introduces one of his most famous detectives, a guy who likes to hang out with friends, likes to drink, to his readers. This guy repeatedly shows up in some of his other works. In each story, he tries to solve a case and explain why the murderer cut the bodies. But what stands out of this book is, in the last part of the whole story, the book, all the previous cases were linked in a very clever way. When I read this a while ago, I remember guessing correctly of some of the answers in the cases, some of the reasons of the dismemberment, but I didn't see how all the stories were put together at the end, how the book ended. And it was definitely a pleasant surprise. Again, in this story, he also writes in a very simple, plain, easy to understand tone. The story unfolds quickly and the twist comes very naturally. And I guess this is the time I want to talk a little bit about why Nishizawa is, or was, no, actually, or is, an important writer to the Japanese mystery circle. We talked about several mystery authors in this channel. They all have their own brilliantness, but Nishizawa, for me, is one of the authors that brings me back to the pure joy of reading about a case and trying to solve it in my head. It's precisely because he writes in a plain and simple tone. He carefully builds up the unknowns that got you hooked. You don't need to draw a map or fill a timetable to try solving his cases. It's not a challenge. I understand there are some books that written by other authors that dazzles you, that puts a puzzle for you and you need to solve it. You need to draw a map, find a timetable, comparing each other's alibis. It's a challenge from the author to you as a reader. But it's not in his cases. He just lay out everything you need to know and let you come up with your own interpretation and explain to the cases, and then he will reveal the truth to you. It's all about the joy of solving the cases and finding the details, the plots in the stories. It's not about his ego or your ego, and it's not a challenge. He is always there. He's not arrogant or trying to bury you in a ton of information or trying to con you by the way he writes or structure a story. For his reader, everything is very plain and simple. You are in for the mystery puzzle. You need to find your own answer, but it's not a showing game. Also, his puzzles are all very cleverly organized. He has a way to catch you by surprise in a not showing off way. Sometimes you will be surprised of how the story ends, but if you read back, going back to the previous chapters, everything adds up and everything makes sense, which I think is one of the reasons that he is the best at what he does. You were only in to find an answer, and frankly, that's why we read murder mysteries, right? We were just a bunch of people trying to find answers and the hidden truth behind a story. And that's why when I heard about the news that he passed away, I felt a tremendous pain, because for anyone who likes Japanese murder mysteries, he is a very important figure, and that's why I wanted to do this video, to show my respect as his readers and may him rest in peace. Also, it's the end of the year, so the next video will be about the yearly summary of all the books I have read in the past year. But unfortunately, the pile where I usually put all the books I've read this year were disorganized because I moved. So I'm trying very hard to dig out all the books in my shelf and decided, wait, did I read this book this year? So it might not add up. I might not actually read the book last year, but I definitely read the books. And please stay tuned, and I hope you will enjoy this video and the next one. And it's been a year since I started this channel. Frankly, when I first started it, there was a voice in my heart saying, you can't keep up, like you're gonna do this for 3 months and then quit. But a year later, here I am, still reading books, making videos, rambling, and I have more fans than I have ever dreamed of. So a big shout out to all of you who subscribed and watched my video. Thank you so much. In the next year, we'll try to read more interesting books and come up with more interesting things to say about them. So see you next time. Bye!